Everyone, welcome to the Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup. Today, we have a really great topic. We're blending content marketing and ABM. ABM is something I want to learn more about. We have David Brutman with us. David is Chief Product Officer and co-founder of a company called Folloze, and he's going to talk about content as the fuel of your ABM strategy. Take it away, David.
Thank you so much, Dennis, and good to see you all here. I am excited to present to you today, first of all, because I love the Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup. I've listened to some of the talks. It's great what's happening during the COVID, twice a week online sessions. And the other kind of reason is that I really think that merging ABM, or really kind of thinking about the ABM through the lens of content marketing, is the holy grail of making ABM strategies extremely successful. I've worked for a company that, or started a company that is using content, but very much is using it to drive business results. And I'll tell you a little bit more about my company. So this is almost like a mission for me, to bring that really smart strategies into, or content strategies into ABM programs. Just a little bit about myself. You can see that from this slide that I'm very interested in music. This is, I call it my fuel. That's what keeps me running when I jog, but also I love listening to all kinds of music. And I actually, like to sing as well. I play the guitar. I like to jam. In my day job, I combine technology and marketing, two of my passions as the Chief Product Officer for Folloze. Folloze, just for a little bit of intro, we are a personalization platform that helps companies create account-based experiences, really all the way to the account and individual level, using smart data in auto generation. So really kind of creating account-based marketing at scale. Work with mid to large companies like Cisco and Oracle and Autodesk and ServiceNow, Dell and others. I'm going to put kind of one thing that is related to mission, which is, and I think you'll probably identify with that, selling through education, not by persuasion. It's almost like a mission statement, which means that if you're doing a really great job in being a consultant for your prospect, you will eventually win their business. And it's even more important in an ABM strategy. A little bit of a kind of fun fact. I told you I like to jam, and it's not as easy as it used to be. So during the COVID days, I actually, came together with my children. I've got 3 of them, 2 boys and a girl. And we decided to form a band. And we called it the Brutman band. So you can see a little bit of our performance. We actually had a block party a few weeks ago. So all our neighbors came out to their driveways, and we performed. You can see me there on the guitar, and my younger son on the drums, my older son on the keyboard and vocals, and my daughter singing. And then we figured out we have a problem because we don't have a bass guitar. So luckily enough, our neighbor is actually a bass guitar a musician, but he couldn't come closer to us. So you can see him here playing with his amplifier right from his driveway. Just the next, he's our next door neighbor. So we're able to do some really fun performance. Everybody cheered for us from their driveway. So it was social distancing approved. And my kids actually came up with a song for the Corona. They call it Corona, Why Do You Have to Be So Mean? That's the name of the next hit. So if you hear it on the radio, you know where it comes from. Moving a little bit forward from music to ABM, I've been following the account-based marketing, I would say, market for probably the last 5 or 6 years. And I really have seen an interesting transition from this being an idea to this becoming a true strategy evolves that helps companies really, focus on their top accounts or the accounts they care about, and really almost to creating a full category. And it has become a very, very active category in the market. And for those of you who are not necessarily very familiar with ABM, ABM is essentially a go-to-market strategy that, unlike traditional marketing, where you kind of create a funnel and you, based on kind of engagement, you allow people to self-select and show interest until you actually nurture them and get to the closed ones that you sell to. It's a little bit of reverse. You essentially come up with a list of accounts that you want to go after. You do your research. You come up with a list of contacts you want to reach out to, and then you essentially engage with them. And you got to be extremely focused. You got to know your customers really well. Typically, those are high value customers or prospects. So that means that you need to be very strategic in the way that you build your reach out to them. And then as you engage them, you can land and expand. You reveal new stakeholders, and clearly once you sell, you typically expand to more, so to upsell and cross-sell. And what I like about this strategy is that if done right, the results are pretty amazing. And I'm going to show a little bit of that later. But the big idea is that you need to shift your thinking to a customer-oriented way of thinking. So, and I'll talk about key customer questions. I'll coin the term later on today. And it's also something that cannot be just a marketing gig. It's called account-based marketing, but I think the right term would be account-based strategies that are implemented by marketing, but also in a close collaboration with sales. And all of these, I think, makes this effort very much close to pipeline generation revenue, areas that most of your companies, I'm sure, are very, very focused on. One important additional point is that we've seen during the COVID period in the last 3-4 months, even more focus on account-based marketing strategies, because first, it enables you to focus on a smaller set of accounts and be very successful. And it also allows you to focus even on your existing customers, which some may claim that in times of crisis, you want to first make sure that your customers are successful and you're able to expand with your customers. So we've seen some of our customers extreme expansion of their usage of account-based marketing. And kind of, I mentioned that we've seen account-based marketing adopted. So the stats are kind of talking about more than 60 companies have adopted some form of account-based marketing programs. And we see more investment in budget. So up to 30% of the marketing budget is associated with those efforts. More increase in people that have titles of account-based marketing. And also on the right side, you see a survey or benchmark study that was done by IT SMA, which I really like. It kind of shows how people are moving to the right side more, from exploring account-based marketing strategies all the way to experimenting them and expanding them. So you can see where the trend is. And I think if done right, the ROI could be significantly higher than kind of traditional marketing. It doesn't mean that traditional marketing doesn't have a place, but if you have a strategy where you want to win target accounts, and I'm going to talk about different layers in a minute, that is very, very effective. And you can see in the bottom another stats, interesting kind of from a results perspective. A lot of companies focus on account-based strategies to either grow their business with existing accounts or selling to new accounts, or even something that is not traditionally part of what marketing does, which is supporting specific opportunities or deals. So something you would call sales acceleration, help sales accelerate the deal. And it shows how marketing is starting to change their point of view from being like a lead generator, a function that, creates MQLs and hands them over to sales, from business partners with sales that want to influence the entire buying process. That's a pretty significant change. It comes from different directions. One of the triggers is that marketing is more and more so being driven to show, influence on pipeline and revenue. So the KPIs are really kind of shifting to become more oriented towards the actual business generation. There are different aspects of ABM, and today I really want to focus on the content side. There are multiple elements to kind of an ABM program. You've got clear the content creation itself. You've got that is trying to answer the question of, which content do I want to offer my buyers or they want to consume. There's the ability to map to the buyer journey. There's the actual campaigns that deliver those content, whether outbound or inbound. There's different channels. Today in this specific talk, I'm going to focus on mostly the buyer journey on the content, but definitely there is more breadth to the topic. So when you kind of start to think about ABM and kind of the planning process of your content strategy, it wouldn't be a surprise to say you first need to really define what are the goals, what are the desired outcomes. And so for example, you want to go up market and you want to acquire those 50 accounts in, a new market that you're in. That's a business goal that is really clear. You want to, upsell a new product to an existing set of customers. You want to acquire a certain set of accounts within a certain segment of the market. So having the business goal is really, really critical when you kind of start your journey. And then what is derived from that would be prioritization and segmentation of the accounts that you're after. I'm going to show you a few examples of segments that you're after and a few ways to segment the accounts. The reason it's so important is also for the delivery, but even more so for the content strategy. To be able to build an effective, almost one-to-one content, and it doesn't really have to be one-to-one. I'll show you some examples later. You really need to segment them and think about what are the similarities of accounts, what are the similarities of the personas that you're after. And then one of the things that I believe is the most important one, which is key customer questions. So try to answer the question of if you need to pick 5 questions that your customers or prospects are going to ask you or ask themselves or trying to resolve through their exploration process, what would be those questions? Because those are the pointers that you would need to deliver your content to. So it's very outside in perspective or analysis. And then once you have that, you can really define almost like content journeys that will enable the accounts. This is a way to think about a buyer journey. These are kind of 4 steps in a buyer journey. We all know that the modern buyers are much less guided by a sales process, and they're much more self-service. They kind of search on the web, listen to, they know your competitors. They have all the information in front of them, and really what you can do as a vendor that is trying to sell to those accounts is really deliver value and be very focused on be relevant to them. And attract is essentially this initial stage where you want to generate some brand awareness and you want to earn some information, some kind of interest by your key stakeholders. Or engage, you actually want to start and nurture them, providing value to them through content. And then being able to create that trust that will earn you the right to sell to them later, close business and really become a vendor to them. And then in Accelerate is where you want to help sales essentially accelerate the deal by continuously nurturing and providing value. And then once they become customers, this is where you want to be able to expand and help them think about renewals and expansions by adding more value. But you'll hear me say many times, I'll talk about value, which is almost trivial, but you see a lot of deficiencies in some of the ABM programs and marketing programs in general that we see. It's not only about the value of the product or service that you're selling, it's about the value of the process itself. And more companies differentiate on the process, the sales or marketing process, and making this extremely differentiated and successful. I will come back to some of the questions that you're welcome to ask questions on the chat. So I mentioned my excitement around content and being in front of a team like yourself, content strategists and creators, because to me, the single most important thing in an ABM strategy is content. Why is that important? Because this is our way to educate our customers in a digital manner. It drives value in the exploration process, but there's also psychological aspects to it. So when you deliver great content throughout the journey, you essentially build a positive brand perception. I don't know if you have that, but I get tons of emails and I get tons of content, but I know that if I get content from a certain company, their content is great. And I have that association in my mind that if I get an email from company X, I'm not going to name companies, but there are ones that are great and there are ones that it's really not valuable. That brand perception is really important. And that is almost, especially when you're trying to sell to target accounts, they may be large. The personas may be C-level people. The last thing you want to do is spam them with bad content or with things that are irrelevant. That's going to essentially close the door for you, maybe forever. So in this case, you actually, you have a few chances, probably one chance to get it right. And that's why high value of content is such an important way to position your brand. And then establishing the sales customer relationship as a positive one. You're essentially helping your salespeople be perceived by their customers as knowledge matter experts. Even if they don't write the content themselves, they deliver it. And that's why it's so important. So that's kind of a little bit more motivation of why content and ABM are there's such a strong synergy, and content, as I mentioned in the name of the talk, is the fuel for a successful ABM strategy. Moving a little bit further, the way typically you want to think about content strategies is first to think about what are the tiers of the accounts that you want to go after. What I mean by that is you may want to first target your top accounts. They're typically 50 accounts. Those are VIP large accounts. They're probably going to be high revenue accounts. You can call them tier A. And you probably want to give them something that is very tailored. And you probably want to put more time in actually researching those accounts. When it comes to tier Bs, is typically you get to the hundreds of accounts. And here you have to start thinking about clusters. So how are they similar to each other? And start using more automation in the way that you actually deliver experiences to them. It's not scalable. Economics doesn't make sense. So you start to do some kind of clustering to be able to build like a programmatic strategy. And then when it comes to the more lots of hundreds or even thousands, that's where it's more like a demand gen, but demand gen that is delivered to account lists. where you still want to be relevant and personalized to the audience, but it's probably even kind of less specific. There are technologies, and one, our platform is one of them that is able to enable programmatic ABM. So although it's programmatic, people think and feel like it's one-to-one to them. And I'm not kind of pitching my company here, but just in general, as you go down the pyramid, you got to start using some technology. It's not necessarily just one cannot be tailored or created simply. So I'd like to kind of start breaking down how do you actually cluster your accounts, but I want to take just a quick break and then to see if you have any comments that you want to ask, or any reflections so far on kind of the model that I've presented so far.
I would have to say the first comment is everyone loved your band.
Thank you. Thank you.
I loved it as well. There was a question, what type of music do you play?
Okay, so we play rock.
Okay.
My son actually is going more on the sweet side of rock. I'm a little bit more of a, but it's rock music. I personally have also passion for jazz. I'm trying to get my kids also to like jazz. That's the next stage.
Awesome. There's actually a question from Rosemary. If you can talk about pricing of Folloze.
Okay, yeah, I'll talk about it at the end, because really it's the entire talk is not about Folloze. I'll just say that towards the end I'll touch a little bit on that, and happy to follow up on that.
And then David, on this slide with the tailored one-to-one 10 to 50 accounts, is that by definition like manual, or could there be some automation there as well?
There could be absolutely automation here. We actually have a customer that have done that specifically. 45 accounts, they've automated it fully. I think one of the other considerations is that more of a a very specific program that is geared to opening the door to those accounts? Or is that going to be an experience that is going to be an entire journey? Because also when there's a sales process that starts to kick in, you want to enable presentations that are presented as part of the sales process, as part of the content that you deliver to accounts. So it's not by definition, but typically the more you go up the pyramid is where you are willing to invest more time and effort in researching and delivering it. But it could also be automated.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So I'll just move one step forward and talk a little bit about how are you thinking about the questions, the key questions that the buying team will need to answer. And I think this is a really important exercise. I've done content marketing myself, worked for a larger corporate. And we always thought about, what are interesting topics to talk about? What would be kind of thought leadership material that we can create? But I don't think we've ever kind of asked ourselves, so, someone who's buying our product or buying a similar product in the market, what are the questions that they want to answer? And try to address content specifically for that. So, what problem do I need to solve? That I'm talking from the perspective of the end customer. What are the trends in the space? What other companies in my industry do? What do they do? How do they address those problems? Who are the players in the market? What are the most important capabilities? And the more you progress in the buying journey, it gets more into risks. So what are the risks that are associated to acquiring such a technology or implementing it? How do I build a business case? That's what I need to justify to my managers. How do I create a consensus? Really important in any B2B buying decision. A lot of content marketing programs could actually help build that business case and help build that consensus internally in the buying committee. So being able to almost like put your customer head on and answer those questions, or put those questions on, enables us to really build a very effective content strategy for ABM programs. So for example, if we go back to the attract, engage, accelerate, and expand as the customer journey, so the x-axis is the time, and the y-axis is the depth of the relationship. When they attract, this is where you want to share material related to the pain point that the customer is trying to answer. What are the market changes, trends, the premise, the solution, what is the solution approach, or I would say, what's the premise of solving the pain point? As you move into the engage stage, that's where you will want to start breaking down to the specifics, which is, what is the distinct business value? What are the best practices that companies similar to me are doing? As you get to the actual acceleration of the sales process, that's where you want to build the business case, help them build the business case for the solution that you're offering. You want to become more technical if this is a technical product. You want to enable your buyer with influencer content. So that means that they can influence internally. One of the best strategies, and I'm sure you guys know that better than I do, is to enable your buyer or your champion to be able to sell it internally. A great opportunity for effective content marketing. And once they actually purchased your product, you can start sharing things that are more specific to upsell. How do you build a business case that builds an additional value on top of your existing value, integrations with existing systems? So this is just examples, but I think it helps break down how you think about the different content assets that you want to create, or in other words, the questions that customers want to answer. One of the things that I think I mentioned in the beginning, that I'm extremely passionate about selling through education. And I think if you've done really good job in the attract phase, you'll earn your right for the engage phase, and you will continue to educate your customers and get to the accelerate stage. And at the end of the day, what that means is customer lifetime value. That's the business outcome of what we're talking about here. And talking about the transition from marketing being an MQL generator to marketing owning and helping through the experience is really where the holy grail is. So if we kind of agree that there are stages and we want to build, and we ask the right questions, and now we've built like a content structure, then comes the question is, okay, great. Now I've got my 200 accounts. How do I actually transform this to a true content marketing program? And I like the term clustering. What that essentially does, it helps you look at similarities of your accounts. So 200 accounts could be clustered. I've seen clustering done by use case, by industry, by persona, by solution. So there are different ways, but probably the two most important ones would be industry and role. And this clustering, I call it the two-level clustering, because it essentially is not looking at, it doesn't take it all the way to be account specific, although it could. So some may say, well, this is really not ABM if this is just healthcare and CSO and role. And I would argue and say that you made it extremely relevant by creating those clusters, and you can add this, a little bit of I would say the dressing on the top, or where you essentially make it also account specific. And I'll show you another example of three-level clustering. So in this case, essentially what you're essentially doing is you're creating content for each one of the clusters, and then you mix and match it based on who you're delivering it to. And then the example on the left side, you see example of a healthcare and a CSO, Chief Security Officer persona, which was one of the roles that were we're seeing here, and almost like a Lego game where you mix and match. 80% of it is industry specific, 20% of it is role specific, it works. So what you've done essentially is you've created a highly effective and relevant content package. In this case, where I'm a great believer in kind of packaging content together. And you can see cyber threats in COVID era is kind of the leading asset in this package. It's highly relevant. And then, an asset that is more specific to threat detection. So this is what, CSOs are, care about. And then, cyber trends in healthcare, and then a white paper for CSOs, and so on and so forth. So you almost like construct your package based on those things. And then the other example is a 3-level clustering, where you actually, you cluster by solution, and maybe 50% of the content is solution oriented. And then you add to it a little bit of an industry flavor, which is the 30%. And then you actually add maybe 20% that is account specific. Now account specific, what we've seen is even if you kind of add some kind of a message to the account, their logo, their name, and some key message for them, this is already being considered as something that has been personalized on the account level. It doesn't mean that you need to recreate your white paper for each and every account. That's not scalable. It's not going to work. But creating solution oriented that is relevant, industry oriented that is relevant, and then adding a little bit of account specific, it could be 10% or 20%, is very, very powerful. So in the example on the left side, you see, it's big data for cyber. That's the solution. Healthcare is the industry, and the company is TD Health. So you can start with, truly personalized message for TD Health, and then essentially show or mix and match 50%, that is focused on the solution. In this case, it's big data for cyber. You have demo, you have a case study, you have a white paper on this, and then add some industry material that you can use and mix and match with that. So these are kind of some of the models. I know this is a little bit theoretical, but what we've seen is that this approach is creating a highly repeatable and successful model. And I'm happy if any one of you wants to do like a breakdown of clustering exercise, I'm happy to do that. I'll stop here for a second because I do want to take some of the questions. I see that Mark is asking, do you create templated versions of your content that sales team then help to personalize, trying to think through how to create personalized assets across the whole buying journey for 50 to 200 accounts? So there are a few approaches, but it's not necessarily kind of creating some templates that salespeople would personalize. That's just too much heavy lifting. Our approach is to programmatize it using marketing and use not the assets, but the experience of the asset, like the package, in order to mix and match industry material, solution or use case material, and account specific material. So that means if you look at the example on the left, it's not about, let's take cyber trends and make it generic enough for salespeople to personalize it. They're just not going to do it. It's not, that's not the strength of salespeople. They could add a little bit of a personal touch to the package when it's being sent, but it's really mixing and matching content that together create high value, and being able to have a very clear message for, I think the most important is, a relevant message for their industry. This is the most impactful one. Then being able to actually mention the account by name, and if you can even have like a message that talks to some of their business problem, like to one business problem that they have. that's already it's a very impressive digital package. If you think about it from the customer's point of view, they get a package that has their name, is mentioning some of the business problems they have, and they start educating them on their industry and on the use case that they're interested in. That's, it's almost like, it's almost like magic. Someone has thought about them, put the time and effort. When it's done right, it changes entirely the customer experience, that customers, the buying experience entirely. One more question from Danielle. That is exactly the issue I'm having working with a client that doesn't have a lot of content or resources to create more, but wants to do ABM. I'm trying to figure out what is realistically possible and what to focus on first. That's a great question, and thanks for that, Danielle. What we've seen is, and I'm going to mention it later, you really don't need too much content. Actually, too much content is counterproductive. When we talk about packages, we typically curated packages of content. Typically, the optimum number is 6 to 7 assets. We've seen that when it goes beyond the 6 and 7, it's too much for people to choose from, and we've actually seen a decline in engagement, believe it or not. If it's 2 or 3 assets, it's sometimes too light. And so one of the things I would say, it's, people think about, it's such a heavy lift, I'll need to personalize everything I do. It's not. You need to take the content that you have and almost like put it as Lego blocks into that clustering exercise, and then identify what's missing. Now, one of the things that I've seen time and time again, one of the greatest assets is third-party content, with attribution to the third party that created the content clearly. If it's not a competitor, it's actually great assets. We even saw companies that included TED Talk videos in the package, with attribution to TED Talk. No legal problem there. So being able to take the assets you have, enrich it with more assets that are third-party assets, blog posts, videos, thought leadership, academia, presentation from YouTube. Beautiful. People love it. Not only do they love it, it actually adds to your brand by the fact that you're actually referring to third party that, academia is always kind of has that perception of, this is very well thought of. A lot of research has been put into that and so on and so forth. So my response would be, it's, some content audit of what's there, being able to complement it with third party, and then the target accounts that you want to go after. You got to know who are you after. And my experience shows that it's very rare that you come to the conclusion that you don't have enough content. It's always claim number one, we don't have enough content. It's enough to give us, to take the content and package it with industry message, some nice creative mentioning of the customer. This is pretty, and it's very, very effective. Again, happy to help you think through that. One additional question: how is it packaged? So that goes to actually some of our specific technology, which is we can make decisions based on data of how to pull the different data assets to the package that is specific for that customer. So it's almost like a rules engine that pulls 2 assets for the industry, 1 asset for the use case, 2 assets for the persona, and package it in a way that is delivered. So this is one example of how this is done. You got to have a technology to be able to make those decisions. Unless it's a very small number of accounts that you can actually manually curate them. But you can think about it as an auto-curated exercise. And Andrea, thanks for the encouragement on third-party content. I think absolutely something that is probably one of the most underused assets. I want to go a little bit into how do you measure success. Clearly, we're all after revenue and pipeline, but typically the way we offer our customers to think about it is also to talk about the effectiveness. Some of the programs or ABMs may be perceived as something that is really long and expensive, and and it doesn't have to be that way. It can actually, you can get to very quick results with some of the reuse tactics that I mentioned earlier. So it's typically, you want to start with just the program effectiveness. How effective were you able to deliver, and how quickly were you able to get to go live. And then the second one, which is a leading indicator, is when you start seeing account engagement, and measuring it is extremely important. So, consumption of content, how long people spend, penetration into accounts, the personas that consumed it. One of our customers, they targeted 45 accounts. Half of them, they were able to actually engage C-level people. The role is really, really important. And then once you actually, and that is a leading indicator for pipeline, but then you actually get to the pipeline contribution, where you can generate pipelines, and you look at things like, pipeline velocity, number of sales conversations that are generated based on the ABM program that you've run, average deal size, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, the focus is on the account and the buying committee, the people that you're after, and looking at how many of them were you able to engage, how deeply did they engage. As content strategists and creators, I think one of the amazing things is that you can actually look at the success of content through the metrics of what are the roles that actually consume this content. Was I able to be effective with the target audience that I was going after, and so on and so forth. Really, really important. There's a lot of insights to be able to fine tune your content strategy, see what works, what doesn't work, and so on and so forth. I'd like to close by I always like to think about, so what are the tangible things that you can think about and execute, or some of the outcomes, the tips that you can walk away from a talk like that. So I think partnering with sales is really, 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 really important. And when I say partnering with sales, that means that trying to understand from them what are the assets that they think would be most valuable. Partner with them in understanding what are the top questions that they've been asked in a process. What would be effective for them? I think it's such a great North Star KPI, we use a lot the sales calls recording products, and it's just fascinating if you listen to sales calls. How much in customer success calls, how much insight you can derive from that, even for content creation, building effective content assets, just by being able to understand what are the objections, how people are asking the questions. It gives you so many great insights. So that's kind of one asset. I mentioned already the 6 to 7 key assets as the magic number. I think it's I remember my days as product marketer. I delivered way more than 6, 7 assets. It just you have so much content, and would deliver as much. I worked for a large company. There was no lack of content. I think that making the decisions of what's more important is really, really important. So if you don't have enough content, it's an easier problem. But if you do have access of content, I think it's really important. Really, and then thinking about high value. I know, again, content marketers, understand that. If you deliver high value, you create great perception, and you would yield high value return for your company. So that's almost like a clear target. There was a question of 6 to 7 content pieces or 6 to 7 marketing targets pieces. So I mean, within the package, 6 to 7 content pieces. I mentioned leverage third-party content, and then use customers' top questions as your guiding principle when you actually think about the strategy. If you're not covering, you came up with top 7 questions and you're only able to cover 3 at the beginning of their journey, still this is a really important exercise, and I can't stress how important it is. So with that, I'll just say I really appreciate the attention. I'm a great believer in ABM and in taking this customer-centric approach to delivering account-based experiences. And I'm happy to, if you want to schedule some time for doing the clustering exercise, happy to assist with that. There was a question on packaging or pricing of Folloze. I'm not going to mention prices, but I will say that we have a mixed pricing model of we call it boards, which is the package itself that you deliver to customers that could be pretty intelligent with decision makings and different permutations. And we do have the package includes some users. So that's kind of the combination. So I think Dennis, I think we took a little bit more time than we expected.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't know if we have time for any kind of live questions.
Yeah, I think we can go until the top of the hour if everyone wants to stay on. I had a follow-up to, I think, what Nolan was asking about. Like if you go back to your 2 cluster, you had the 3 industries and 3 personas. So that's 9 different combinations, right? So if let's say I'm a small team, I'm one full-time content marketer, and in the course of 1 year, I wanted to create one asset to cover all 9 of the combinations. How would you think about approaching that task?
So you want to create one asset?
Yeah, so I see 9 different pairs, right?
Yes, correct.
And I want to create over the course of a year, one asset to target each of the 9.
Okay.
Is there some efficiencies where I'm not creating like 9 white papers, like 1 a month?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually think that in this case, I would actually create an asset for industry, each one of the 3 industries,
Yep.
and then one asset for each one of the roles, and then mix and match them.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, because and that's we would love to talk to the CSO in a healthcare company and create an asset that will be very specific to them. But I would argue that there are 2 reasons why you don't have to go that route, because it's that is really difficult, heavy lift. First of all, when you talk about healthcare, my assumption is that you're pretty much talking to all your roles, and there's actually something very attractive about talking not to a specific role, because the CSO, the IT manager, and the compliance officer in this case, they're actually making the buying decisions together. Over segmentation is like if you're going to segment something to be very specific for a CSO in a healthcare company, you're essentially not exposing the CSO to the fact that their coworkers, the ones that they're going to make the decision with, their concerns are also addressed. So I would argue, and we've seen that in the numbers, that it's actually more it's more effective to create an asset for healthcare that would generally talk about the 3 roles rather than try to optimize it for each one of those combinations. So I don't know if that made sense, Dennis, but I think it's essentially saying create 1 per industry, 1 per role, and then mix and match, and that will actually give you a better result from efficiency, but also from an outcome perspective.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other kind of questions?
So I have a
wanted to say
oh,
thank
go ahead.
because I have struggled with a few of these different things of, people wanting very specific targeted content and not really recognizing the value of broader industry targeted content or third party. So it's just wonderful to hear that that's part of what you've seen is an effective strategy.
Yeah, thanks.
So I have a friend, Todd, who's on this Zoom. So I'm going to ask a question that I'm guessing he would ask you. Where do you see direct mail fitting into ABM campaigns?
Yeah, direct mail, direct mail has definitely had a renaissance recently. And I think part of it is because people kind of lost a little bit of the personal touch. I think that it's a great channel. It's not necessarily a great channel to deliver a lot of content. It's a great channel to attract the attention of people, and then being able to follow up with the content that actually is supporting them. So what I mean by that is I've seen a great return of sending direct mail with some cool idea, and then have a QR code that maps it to a specific account-based experience where they can actually consume digital content based on some of the models here. I've seen this work really, really well. One of the things that I think doesn't work is that if you just use direct mail just as a way to reach out to people, but you don't have a follow-up. So it becomes almost like a gimmick and not more than a gimmick. I'll tell you an example. One of the cloud vendors sent to me, I run, development teams in cloud operations, and they sent to me cookies, which is nice. I mean, they sent cookies to the office, really nice one. They emailed me twice, and they called me to make sure that I got the cookies, and and it was great. I shared it with other people, and when I opened the box, there were cookies inside, and that's it. There was nothing else. And I'm like, what? You've got my attention. Do you have this cloud provider? Do you have any special offering for a company at our stage, post round B, maybe some offerings or programs, or how can you help me? You just got my attention, but you did nothing with that. So it stayed cookies and nothing else. So in my mind, it's a great tool if you know how to use it, but it's a great way to grab the attention. That is the point where you actually want to route it to something more effective, which is value and education, which people really, really appreciate. So I've seen it used really, really nicely. I actually had a customer that did that. They did something totally custom. They sent mail to 6 different stakeholders in one company. And then they had to come together to create like a puzzle. And this puzzle had that the QR code. They got some gift card and a QR code to where the personalized experience for that account is. So people get very creative, and that gamification is such a great thing. So so this is just one example of how to use direct mail in a very creative way.
Yeah, that's a great example. And with that, David, I think we are now out of time. So thanks so much for spending an hour with the group today. Keep the band playing, and I hope your family stays safe.
Thank you so much. I'll
right.
at some point I'll share recordings so you can actually hear the music.
Excellent.
Appreciate the time, and I really encourage you to continue the great work you do, Dennis, with this meetup.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today. Stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Take care.
David, Dennis.
Thanks.
Pleasure. Take care.